Because you have it under like one of your options in the top menu. I posted on our page that we'll be going live soon because there were 8 people on.
Okay, perfect.
So hopefully. Oh, this is live on Facebook.
I am live and I am muted on my computer. So let me share my screen.
So hopefully. Oh, this is live on Facebook.
I am live and I am muted on my computer. So
that's good. I think we're ready now.
Share my screen.
And then get your recording started again because it's paused.
All right, I need to find my share screen. Oh, I've got to, do I have to restart this? No.
Hopefully. Oh, this is live on Facebook.
Okay, got it. So I'm screen sharing. Are we on now? I think we are.
Good. I think we're ready now.
Righty. So everyone who's on Facebook, thank you very much for putting up with us while we're trying to get ourselves organized. I need to find my share screen. Oh, I've got to, do I have to restart this? No.
Hopefully. I closed down Facebook, Carol, if you want to keep going.
Okay, sounds good. So you're closed. Okay. Thank you everybody on Facebook for putting up with us as we try to get ourselves organized today. My name is Carol Myers and I'm excited to present the Series 3 show featuring David Kreiner, Biff Vigil, Jeanne Fields, and Scooter DiMaggio. So we have a couple of the artists here for us this evening to talk about their work. And then 2 of the artists were unable to be here, so I'll be speaking for them. Before we get started though, I really want to talk about the Box Factory for the Art and its interest and mission to support regional artists by showing their work and supporting them in other ways. Every fall, we have a submission process where we choose artists who we feel would be a really good fit for our gallery shows. And so we are really interested in showing the work. And when the COVID thing started, the pandemic, we felt as an organization that it was really still important to get the artwork out there and support these artists. So we've gone completely online this year, and we've also supporting the artists by lowering our commission. And so if you find something that just really appeals to you and you'd like to purchase it, just know that the artist is getting an even larger portion of their sale price, and we're supporting artists as much as we can. So I'm going to start. I've got the main gallery up here, and I'm going to start with Jeanne Fields. And let me go to her gallery. And I'd like to invite Jeanne to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about what we're going to see here in her show today.
Well, thank you, Carol. I really appreciate the opportunity and admire a lot of what's been happening in the Box Factory, and to be able to have art available regionally is pretty fabulous for us. I've been working for a few years with pretty much a nature base, as you'll see in my work. But it does range, so some is pretty realistic, but others of the work travels into more contemporary realism and sometimes surrealism. Not quite as surreal as people you might think of, like Salvador Dali or Magritte or people like that, but just a little kind of twisted up a bit. So I like that exploration. I like being able to, within oil painting primarily, be able to explore different styles while staying in the realm of nature. For many, many years, I have been concerned, I guess, both what's happening to our world, what's happening in the physical world as to our planet. And so while you might think that nature work and landscape painting is kind of somewhat pretty pictures, to me, it also raises concerns for us and brings to our attention how precious what we have is, and how we really do want to value it and protect it and stay alert to what's going on. And of course, I could go on and on about that, but I won't. So this is maybe, I don't know, Carol, do you want to kind of go into these pictures a little and me to follow up? Or?
Whatever you'd like to do. I'm going to do a slow walk through them. And
well, we all sigh with great relief in Michigan when spring and summer finally come. And we have to wait sometimes till the end of May to really get there. But this is about like in July in the garden and looking at bee balm and treasuring all the creatures that come to appreciate it, the bees. And then up, I like surprises in my artwork. So actually, I don't know if you can tell it, but on the tallest flower, there's like a little dragonfly there that kind of just wouldn't normally catch your eye. But to me, that's the value of interesting art, that it goes beyond what just hits you in the face, and you can look more and find more. So I kind of try to do that throughout my work, have little surprises for people. And another kind of surprise, which sort of goes to the surrealism angle of, you may know the artist Magritte, and he's famous for things like clouds floating through people's faces and above a top hat that doesn't have a head below it and stuff like that. But in this case, the clouds are going right through the cottage. And I think I titled this something like Cabin Dreaming or My Head Full of Clouds, something like that. But it's awful. Feel, yes.
Cottage dream, head in the clouds.
There you go. And again, water related. I do live on a pond, and it's been fascinating to see the different kinds of reflections that we get, in which you could just think this is just some kind of abstract thing, but this truly is the inspiration of water, what you can see in the glistening. Or actually, I happened to look up, I believe it was amoebas, but under the microscope as to what these little things look like that are in our water. And there were patterns quite similar to what you see in the yellow going right across the water. So again, taking the realism based, but looking at it in a little more contemporary way, and to allow for a little bit more feeling towards what we have that's precious to us. This was just the joy of experimenting with shapes and color. So here, I guess I've moved towards the abstract, but with some still figuratively based form in there, like what could be looked at as someone like a bird on the right-hand side with a bird head. I've explored red, color, shape, line, and I think I've still stayed within the realm of the more contemporary, but still nature form based, except for that square. I guess you could take issue with me on that one. I lived in California for quite a while, and on a moonlit night, you could look out and see shapes of things joined together. You could see gold of the dried grasses. The moon became in itself I don't know how to describe that one, but an entity, a definite entity. And when it showed out there, you felt like you were in a very mystical place. That's what I tried to bring to this one, to share that sense of mysticism. And also then to explore again how shapes can be combined and disappear, come to the front, move around and become active. Again, moon inspired. You've heard the term blood moon. My husband and I went out for a walk on one of those nights, and when we came around a hill, even though it's not supposed to be orange, even though they say blood moon, and yet the moon we saw had this pink aura about it. So this is, again, a more surrealism approach to, there's no real trees that look like that. But it causes you to value how light works and form works, and to create a feeling of what being out on an evening like that could be. It was kind of a joy to do that way. Again, nature of this is referenced in a California experience where there's a lot more boulders, rocks, dried out hills. I called it across the road. So in the foreground, you have this kind of purple hedge of plants that more go to that kind of dried out climate, that you see those kinds of colors. And that yet off in the distance across that road, way in the back, a tiny little form. All the forms and the light causes things to be kind of more in your face. And so I wanted to bring that to this painting. This is not a large one. I believe it's 16 by 20. And yet it captures a lot of strength and has a lot within it to make it feel like you're in a bigger place. Well, this little girl, again, I'm asking the question. She's out there. I have another painting, which you'll see maybe next or later, using her. She's one of those people that seem to come into the world wanting to take chances and dares. So she's out at the Great Lake, Lake Michigan. She's got her earmuffs on, and yet she's got bare feet. And I asked the question, do her parents know where she's at? We have a lot to learn at the Great Lakes. You may know it's been in the news a lot the last few days. There's been some tragedies, but that's what makes nature art all the more important to me, is that while we have these wonderful treasures, we have to greatly respect them, and we have to learn about them. And if we go to play in that area, we have to know all about them. They give us much, but in return, they deserve just an awful lot of respect. So maybe this painting has taken on a little bit new shape, which is always interesting about art, because depending on what events are happening, art can do a metamorphosis for you. So yeah, this takes on a new light for me today. There she is in the actual experience, which I did take a picture of her. And the title of it is, Yes, It's Cold, which it really was. And there was an earlier discussion about whether her parents were going to allow her to take her shoes off and even get close to it. It was very late fall, maybe the end of November, when this whole event happened, and the lake was up and you can hear the roar by looking at the waves. And yet she had this sense of adventure in her heavy winter coat with her earmuffs and the shag thing of her hood, leather black mittens behind her back, and these little shorts and bare feet. So just every which way, it's interesting in terms of what children will do and their whole experience in learning to love and appreciate, again, what we truly, in our heart of hearts, want to treasure and keep. I focus a lot on the Great Lakes because I've spent a lot of time at Lake Michigan. I don't want it just to be pretty pictures. I want to present its moods. This is one that does that. It's not always a safe place. It's not always, your day at the beach. You may have to be very bundled to be there, but it's a pleasure in a way to be able to kind of get a little more nitty gritty with what happens in nature and be able to to show it in its different dynamics that happen. So that was the purpose of kind of wanting to explore this subject more deeply and what it could bring to us to think about. And on the brighter, more pleasant side, on a summer day in the lake, we had 3 generations. The mother putting suntan, really across the board. When you think about humanity, you can picture this going on all around the world at seaside places with families coming and rituals taking place of the grandma putting this lotion on her lovely grown daughter and the kid pulling on mom's hand because she wants to go play or go someplace else. But it's a kind of a universal image that it's just really a lovely thing to think about, that our shared humanity. This is a rather large one, 30 by 40 inches, I think. And I've titled it Storm Coming In. Again, wanting to present that aspect of a windy day, all those grasses blowing around. Waves are up, not a lot that you can see, but they're there. You can hear the wind blowing. You can see the clouds on the move. Something's going to happen, whether it actually makes rainfall or moves on across Michigan. But again, it's looking at all the various moods that we experience if we connect with a large, well, the lake in itself, I mean, it's a huge body, I think 900 miles long. When I lived in California, I would say to people, you start in San Francisco and you end in Los Angeles, and that's the length of the Great Lakes, of the Great Lake Michigan. You start at the coast, you end in the Central Valley, that's Lake Michigan. In a way, it's a little bit misnamed. So it's kind of like an inland sea more than it is what you the concept of lakes. I kind of want to bring that largeness and scope to what I present in these paintings. This one's called On Vacation. And it's a Florida botanical based painting. And again, in our society, we sort of we read from left to right. And I think the photo of the painting kind of makes it a little bit more intense. So you see the figure rather sooner than later in the actual painting. It's again, kind of a surprise when you arrive and, oh, there's somebody sitting there. I purposely took the walkway right through the man in order to kind of hide him a bit so that you might not see him right away, taking some liberty with the actual scene that was in front of me. And this was a lot of fun in terms of different textures, how to come up with a more gravelly kind of stonework that was around those grasses in the foreground and around the bench, how to have things that look more like hardscape and rock, and then to try and understand more how to handle the foliage and softness in comparison with fencing and hardscape and gravel and bench work. So there's a variety here of challenges within the painting that turned out to be a pleasure to do. So. I think I called this one Midnight Light. And I've had people look at it and say, is that a pond? Which it kind of looks like water too. But I was looking at my garden and the ground was quite dark. But I wanted that contrast of the plant life. And I also wanted it to be disrupted a bit. There's a term going around these days, I think it's called disrupted realism, if I've got it right. And so part of my purpose here was to explore that possibility of dragging the paint right through and creating illusions that could be water, could be earth, challenging the eye a bit to ask, what is that back there? You know, what's going on in the things that are not so clearly defined, like to the right of the pot. Is it a flower? What is it to the left of the pot? Just wondering what those forms are all about. So trying to disrupt it bring it a little bit more into this contemporary realm, but still deeply appreciating those gorgeous flowers and the beautiful colors. So. More of the lake on quite a fall day, actually, again. More hardened footprints, and the grasses are clearly dried out. They're kind of almost stiff. The clouds and the light in the fall are entirely different than the light in the summer or the light in the winter. In the fall, it's kind of a sideways light that causes things to stand out with high drama. It adds a golden glow that you don't see as much. Winter, of course, quite a cool palette, literally and figuratively. Summer, we see green grass sometimes even early on. So the whole light and aspect of what's happening in nature changes with each season. And again, everything about Lake Michigan, I want to bring that experience to people so that they see. I mean, it's more than just your pretty summer day, though it is that as well. Well, this is fun. This definitely gets into the more surrealistic, playful. It's like, are those kites up there? Well, in fact, they are. And what kind of a day is it? And what are those, that silly tree thing? There's paths. Where are people going? And for me, it is, again, another metaphor for waiting and waiting and waiting for spring to come. And it's only in our imagination at that point. And we want to be able to go outside and fly a kite and feel the warm. We want to be able to open the door and fall out and not just have to put on our 7 layers of clothing and our boots and our everything else. So this is kind of the desire for spring. And so that, anyway, that's kind of the sense of mystical that I wanted to introduce, along with a surrealistic look at what nature could represent in the interesting little forms, and everything from candy canes to kites. This one is a smaller painting, but again, it captures what a lot of us feel. It's called Finding Comfort. It's a walk, man on a walk, he's by himself, which we do have those treasurable moments in places like that, though we love to be with other people. Sometimes that solitary walk down the beach gives you a perspective that you would never have otherwise. Your problems tend to grow a little bit small because of the vastness that's out by you. Many people find answers and inspiration in these kinds of experiences. So again, that mystical sense of what you can have, what nature can give back to you. We take a lot from nature, but its gifts are amazing. To appreciate that, to value it, to protect it, to experience it, I think those are an extremely worthy way to experience life. Another fall day in that light. Again, more questions. There's 4 girls out there, but there's an awful lot more shadows. So what's that all about? Here I explored simplifying shape. As you notice in the water in the back, you don't see a whole lot of wave action. You know it's there. It's rather flat. It leads you up towards the sky, which is rather small. But by doing that, it established a lot of crispness that kind of went along with all those shadow figures. While these girls called their cousins, having a simple game of catch with somebody's jacket that they rolled up. I mean, that's truly what it was all about. So that's why it looks very strange. It's not exactly a ball. But what kids experience and enjoy when they have this kind of opportunity. Again, a summer garden picture. I think I've titled it, "Is that a butterfly?" And maybe you can see a butterfly there. I won't give it away. If you find it, great. But it is there. This was fun, and I was able to do it just looking out my window. And it was, sometimes things take a long time and sometimes they're very fast. This one was pretty darn fast, so I considered that a gift. A lot of different line going on, but our gardens are that way. They're a little bit messy, which is the joy. Well, here we've taken a jump to a more abstract experience. But this was based on a sand dune climb, a very hot day. I will say that all my artwork is based on an experience I've had, basically, that I assume is more universal for everybody. And I know many, many people out there have climbed sand dunes. So this was actually in the Destin area in Florida, where we had this long climb on white sand, though it's hard to paint white sand and have it still look like anything beyond just a blank canvas. But it was a long climb. It was very hot. You came to this place where all the foliage began, which I did abstract. I did and put it as a strip across the top. And then beyond that, you could interpret it, I suppose, either as sky or as water. A definitely more contemporary approach to this one, but still nature-based. We have golden glow going here, and more probably what you could term tonalism, where the colors are glowing and more in connection with one another. I've called it Last Picnic of Summer, which was based on my own experience with our own round table, which I've tilted upwards and changed the projection of things by actually moving everything more so that you travel upward in the painting. The hills that are across the pond are, as you see, quite strong. So it's brought up right in your face. The line on the right of the navy going up the canvas, the dark blue, is to lead your eye up there, because kind of that's what happens. You sit around and you look across and it becomes larger than life to you and becomes bigger. So that was kind of my goal, as well as just to establish this whole ambiance of warmth, appreciation, late summer heat, this whole, yes, joy of the willow tree, those kinds of things. So. Carol, you can get in here anytime, yakking my head off or night.
This is your last piece, so.
Okay, then keep going, she says.
This
Coral,
is, yeah,
this
this is
one.
the last one.
Yeah. Again, it's Michigan based. I have been combining forms. The tree runs right into that roof. It's kind of a way to take realistic nature and bring it again in a new way to refresh your eye, to have you take another look and ask questions about how did this and why did it get arranged the way it is, and see the blue tree in the smack in the middle of the painting. And so it was takes it more surrealistic again, but it's fresh in my view. I hope it is in yours too. So I very much enjoyed being able to share my work with you. I'll thank Carol and the Box Factory.
Thank you. Is there any way we can see if there are any Facebook comments, Betsy?
I don't see any.
Okay,
No.
all righty. Well, I hope that anyone who comes back and views this will leave some comments or questions for us. So thank you, Jeanne, for sharing
Thank
with
you.
your work.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now I'm going to go back, I think. How am I going to do this? Ah, there we go. All right. So here we have David Kreiner, who lives in Chicago, Illinois. And I'd like to let him in himself and talk a little bit about his work before we start going through his work as well.
Hi, thank you, Carol. So the work that I have put together for this particular show, which is called Along the Way, is all work that has been done in the last 1 to 3 years or so. And at first I thought about calling the show something else, but I decided against that and went with Along the Way for a couple of reasons. I've been thinking a little bit about how goal-oriented I can become, and I don't think I'm alone in this regard. I think a lot of us, we often think in terms of how we want to improve ourselves or make ourselves more successful. And so we're looking off into the future. And when we start to do that, well, one of the things that can happen, at least to me, is I start to notice less of what is happening right now. And with that in mind, I thought that I would put together a show of paintings that deal with these spaces in between, or these moments that happen along the way, rather than making art about something that is a foregone conclusion, making art about something that we assume is true or real. This is more about what happens in process. This one is called Wish. When morning comes to meet you. What's it all about? What if? View. Today becomes tomorrow. Surrender. Spirit painting. Return. One mountain, many paths. Once in a lifetime. If it's all the same. Grow. flicker. Embark. Closer than you think. Catch as catch can. Along the way, a sense of place. And so it will take a lot of love.
So I didn't want to interrupt the idea of just looking at these pieces and absorbing them, but I'm noticing, I don't think you talked about the fact, are these collage elements that I'm seeing in some of these?
In some of them, yes, there are collage elements. Like this piece that you're looking at right here called Wish, there are some parts, like toward the sort of middle lower part, you see some flowers that are sort of positioned sideways. That's collage. But then there are other things that might sort of look like collage, but are in fact painted. For example, at the very top, we see a pink flower. That's actually painted. Yeah, that one, or the one that's even a little higher up there, that one is in fact painted. So I like to kind of play around with collage and maybe even stop somebody for a little bit and have them look at it before deciding how it's done. Yeah, that's a good question, Carol.
I had a similar, when I was looking at your paintings and seeing the elements that I thought maybe were photos. Are they your photos? Did you take them or did you find them or?
They're largely found. Yeah, most
Okay.
of them come from old periodicals like Life magazine from the
Okay.
1950s and 60s. I've got a whole set of boxes that contains old magazines that I use just for this purpose. And yeah, now that one that you're looking at right there, that doesn't have any collage. That's all painted.
Interesting. And
But
do I see dice? Am I imagining that?
I think you do. Yeah, so with these newer paintings, the tendency has been to kind of push a little bit further away from the collage and focus more on an approach where I spend a much longer amount of time rendering something. So maybe spending a few hours on a flower or a piece of fruit or a pair of dice or something like that, instead of simply cutting them out and then gluing them to the surface. And I like aspects of both approaches. Like the photographic approach does lend a certain appearance that is different from what I achieve when I paint something. But then at the same time, when I paint an object, I don't know, I guess there's something, at least to me, that's satisfying about that, about going through that process and wrestling with a flower for a while and really kind of watching it morph. It's something that I used to do a lot of when I was younger, like in high school and making art back then. Most of the art I would make as a younger person tended to be more realistic. And then I kind of got away from that when I was in art school. And now I feel like, well, maybe I've kind of gone full circle and I'm coming back to that and including these more sort of realistic, detailed elements in the work all over again.
And isn't it actually a little bit riskier than collage, because you can slap something on and say, well, not quite. But if you've spent the time to render something, you're kind of taking a little bit bigger risk, perhaps?
Well, I did feel that way at first, Carol. Yeah, at first I sort of felt like, well, what if I fail? What if I try to paint that lemon and it looks terrible and botched and just isn't nearly as good as the collage would deliver. So yeah, I had those kind of thoughts. But I've gotten to a point now where I don't worry about it. You know, it's, if I'm taking a risk, I don't really think of it that way. I'm just doing what's satisfying and pleasurable to me at the moment. And that could be collage, or that could be painting something, an object.
Yeah. I know one of my professors in art school always said, as soon as you find a passage that you really like, paint it out.
Oh, yeah. Like if you get too precious with something,
Right.
a lot of times I notice that, like there'll be a part that I'm very attached to, and I think maybe for a long time as I'm working that it is in fact the best part of the painting, you know, and but then what I'll come to realize after a certain point is that it's also problematic. It can be a part of the painting that holds everything else back ultimately.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if I can point out an actual part of a painting that was like that, because it wouldn't be in the painting anymore, right?
Right. But I guess that's the risk I was talking about, that you spend a lot of time rendering something versus a collage where you could just say, oh, I like it here, I like it there, change it up.
Well, I kind of think of it as like collage is more like arranging something in a room, like in a home, where you might say, I think I want that plant over there in the corner. No, I don't. I'm going to change my mind and put it over here next to the red sofa. And then painting includes some of that, but then also there's this, you know, meticulous kind of thing where you bring something to life over a very gradual amount of time. But both processes are very interesting to me.
Yeah.
Now that one, oh, can we go back to that one, Carol?
Sure. I can find my button. There you go.
So this one is called Spirit Painting, and it's from, I think, 2018. And the flowers that you see there, two of them are painted. The purple one is painted, the yellow one is painted, but then the one off to the left, that's collage with a little bit of paint on top of it. So this was right when I was starting to really explore painting things as realistically as I knew how.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I would start doing it, I don't want to give too much away here, but I would start with an image, like a collage image. And then in this case, I just removed the collage and then repainted the area that was left over, the bare canvas, okay? So at one point, all three of those flowers were in fact collaged, until I decided that, well, maybe I can do this in a different way, and maybe in some way even honor a tradition of more realistic approaches. So that piece there was kind of maybe a transition piece, if you want to think of it that way.
That's kind of what's nice about seeing your work in series, isn't it? To see, you don't see that when you're doing it.
No, it's always different. Like once there's an exhibition, to see all the work together, invariably I notice new connections, new relationships between pieces that I might not have considered if they were just stashed away in my studio somewhere. Yeah. Now that one right there, that one that we just
I jumped the gun, sorry.
That's okay. That's called Once in a Lifetime. And that's That one is quite large. I'll just say that because it's very hard to tell any of this, I know, when we're just looking at a screen. But that one is larger than the others. It's 6 by 8 feet. And it's actually comprised of 2 panels that are sandwiched together side by side. Yeah, you see the seam there. If you look closely enough, you can detect that. If I made it one panel, 6 by 8 feet, I wouldn't have been able to get it in and out of my studio. So that was why I made it in 2 pieces. The 2 pieces attached with hardware on the back, and then you take the hardware off when I have to transport it. So this piece is actually, I was planning on having it at the Garver Feed Mill in Madison, Wisconsin, which is a large exhibition space that's conducive to these kind of larger paintings. We'll see if it happens. It was scheduled to happen in the fall, but of course, because of the virus, things are probably going to be delayed at least a little bit.
And why is it called Once in a Lifetime?
Oh, can we flip back to it?
Sure.
Well, I call it Once in a Lifetime because I have this idea that keeps popping up in my head that every single moment that we are around, that we are alive, that we are conscious, is somehow very precious and very special. And I could be twiddling my thumbs, or I could be riding a roller coaster, or I could be, celebrating my birthday or something. And all of these moments are once in a lifetime moments. They're all moments that are here for a very brief amount of time, and then they're gone, And I think as humans, we have a tendency to kind of rank some moments as more interesting or more important than others, and then sort of disregard almost a lot of the other moments. And that's something that I've been working on to try to get away from. That goes back to the title of the show, Along the Way.
So I'm just going to go back through and grab anything if you want to make a talk about it.
Oh, well, let's see. Let's keep going here.
All right. So I just want to say this is closer than you think, that I see the virus, maybe. I don't know. Is that?
Oh.
What do you see in there, Carol? Tell me what you see.
Oh, the closer than you think, and all of the virus and all the images of it. And
you see virus in there.
And the redness of it.
Yeah.
It speaks to me in a very visceral way, whether it's related to that when you were painting it or not. That is some of the emotion that kind of comes up in me when I see it.
Yeah. Well, I try to keep my paintings abstract enough that they lend themselves to multiple interpretations, so that you might very well be able to look at a painting like Closer Than You Think and have those thoughts come to mind and associate the painting with something that is very current. I like it when those kind of things happen. Of course, I have my own thoughts, my own interpretations while I'm working and that sort of thing. But I tend to not want to impose that on other people. I want other people to make their own discoveries and maybe realize something about themselves when they look at the work, rather than just realize something about me.
And here are your lemons.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you.
I love lemons too.
Yeah, I have kind of a lemon lime thing going on here. I don't know if I can totally explain it, but this was one of the paintings where I did it about 2 years ago. And yeah, this one does not have any collage whatsoever. It was one of the first where I decided to just abandon collage for a while and just paint. And so I started even kind of studying some of the more traditional painters like Vermeer and some of the old masters, and started looking at how do they render things like pieces of fruit, and tried to study that. And I didn't, of course, go about it exactly the way some of those more traditional painters would have, because I use acrylic. I use acrylic paint. But what I discovered is that a lot of the same principles hold true, whether you're using acrylic or whether you're using oil. And I started using some glazing mediums and started seeing the objects a little differently, I think. Seeing them differently as opposed to how I would have if I was still just cutting them out of a book and then adhering them to the surface. What other questions you guys have? I like it when you guys have questions.
And I don't have any from our Facebook viewers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this turns out to be just as much of a gallery talk as anything. I think that people will love coming back and hearing all of the different comments. And isn't that the wonder of an exhibition, to put that out there and see how people respond to your work?
Yeah. And so then this little interview, or whatever we call it that we're doing right now, this opening, how will it be accessible then later on to people if they want to see the show?
Well, if they want to see the show, they'll come to our website, but this will live on our Facebook page.
I see.
So we're live streaming so that this will be a part of that. The difficult part of live streaming to Facebook is the beginning of it's going to be a little bit garbled because it takes a while to get going live,
Yeah.
but it will live there. So
Kim,
people
do you want to show the homepage and see like if someone came right to the Box Factory's homepage where how they would see the show?
Oh, like if they went to the website, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is going to take me to the homepage, right, Betsy?
Yes.
Come on.
Yeah, always go slower when we're sharing.
Yeah. Okay. So this is our homepage, and here's our 2020 exhibition series with David Kreiner, Biff Vigil, Jeanne Fields, and Anthony Scooter DiMaggio. And so all you need to do is click the view here and wait while it gets itself together. And then this is the gallery homepage where it'll show everybody's show. I've divided it up as if it were in the galleries that we assigned originally. So people that we paired together are seen together. And then the Riverwalk Gallery. So that's how you'll see the show. And also we have up at the top, if anyone's interested in purchasing, you can contact gallery@boxfactoryforthearts.org to do that. Okay, thank you, David.
Yeah, thank you, Carol.
Thanks for coming along for the ride. And I'm going to share the other two, and unfortunately I'll have to speak for the artists. I think that might be a little bit trickier, but I'm going to give it a try. So I'm going to introduce Biff Vigil. When I met her, she was living in South Bend. She's now living in Indianapolis. And Biff is a printmaker, and I'm a printmaker, so I really am very excited about her work. She does a relief print. A relief print is something where you're actually rolling ink on the surface and printing from the surface of something. You cut away everything that you don't want to print. I'm guessing these are either wood cuts or lino cuts, but I don't know. She just calls them relief prints. And she considers herself a rust belt printmaker, an experimental navigator, painter, sculptor, run-on sentence enthusiast, big fan of all dimensions of being embodied, and making conceptual, essaic work Each line is an extrapolation of her handwriting, exploring non-conceptual knowing in the spirit of celebrating offering departure from the Cartesian self. That's a pretty big statement, but I particularly like the fact that she says, I use all forms of print to celebrate the intersections of mind, body, and heart, which I think is something that we can all relate to. And again, as a printmaker, I find her work to be incredibly graphic and powerful, especially with the black and white. So this is the meeting spot. And she has these separated by or grouped specifically intentionally, but I don't have that information with me to share with you. I think that we can just enjoy the images as they are. Shadow looping 4.
They're really quite beautiful and mysterious to me. I didn't want to say too much because I feel like maybe it's your domain here, Carol, but I
it's not.
can't help but unmute myself there for a minute just to comment on the mystery that I get from the work.
And in a world that seems pretty complex, the starkness and the clarity of her image I find to be very appealing. Now, I've seen her work. I'm making the assumption that she has cut away the white, and that's the white of the paper, and she's printing with the black. And that's tricky as a printmaker to get such a depth of black. So the white is the white of the paper, and the black is rolled ink. And I kind of wish she was here to speak to this because she has just an incredible depth of thought that goes into this work.
Do you know, Carol, are these all one-of-a-kind prints, or?
These are editions limited to 9.
I see.
So each of this is, an edition of 9.
I see.
Mhm. Oops. All right. I guess
I think we've gone all the way around.
I think we have. All right. There you go.
To me, they're evocative of some of the Native American art that I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, there was a couple that had some kind of geometric forms that reminded me almost of maybe Navajo art. And then there's another artist who came to mind, Tarsila do Amaral, who was a Brazilian painter from earlier in the 20th century, who would often have like really exaggerated proportions, like gigantic heads and eyeballs that would be much larger than anything else in the painting, in at least in relation to it. And so there's something about work here that reminds me, I guess, of some of the surrealists and their approach, but these feel very contemporary to me
Yeah,
at the same
absolutely.
time.
Okay, so that's Biff's work. Thanks, David, for piping in. Any questions from Betsy or Facebook?
No, I don't see any.
Okay. Well, then I'm going to introduce.
I was in a little trance looking at her work. It hypnotized me.
Uh-huh.
It's pretty amazing, isn't it? Okay, this is Anthony Scooter DiMaggio, and he's working tonight, so I'm sorry that I'm not able to have him come up here, but he grew up in St. Joseph, Michigan, went to Kalamazoo College, and he was a double major in economics, business, and fine art. Interesting combination. And he chose to attend graduate school to earn an MFA from the Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. And he's found himself intrigued with a myriad of topics, issues, and disciplines: evolutionary psychology, spirituality, sports, sociology, sexuality, economics, writing, graphic design, social justice, and comedy, among others. I think that kind of hits everything, doesn't it? And years ago, he said he helped start a custom-made bobblehead doll business with two friends, and then went on to doing a digital sculpting program called ZBrush. So on the side, he bartends. So he's at the Plank tonight over at Harbor Shore. I believe that's how we say. So he's not able to be with us tonight. So I'm going to show you his work. He calls it Patterns in Tape, and he's employing duct tape and color tape to make landscapes, logo type decor, and surreal-like patterns and designs. By layering strips, regions, and organic imagery with tape, I create effects that portray the abstract and the familiar. To hold these designs, I begin with silhouettes in the form of shapes of states, animals, or other representational outlines. The combination of silhouette and pattern reveals a beautiful dichotomy of the simple and complex. So, the state of Texas. And I've not been to Texas, so I don't know whether the imagery somehow speaks to that or not. South Dakota. Ohio.
I was surprised he had some states that were backwards. And I wish I could ask him more why he did that.
Is this one backwards? My geography is a little weak, but
yeah, I went to college in Ohio, so I was like, that's backwards. And Michigan, when we see Michigan, that's backwards too.
Oh, interesting. I wonder, well, these are the images he gave me, so.
And this is New York, which I'm from. And when I I was reading oh, this is New York, I'm like, oh yeah, that's New York. I kind of tipped my head.
You're right.
Oh, it's sideways.
Yeah. Sideways and backwards.
Yeah. What this reminds me of is, as a kid, I don't know about you guys, but we always were working on these puzzles of the United States. And I remember having a couple of them. One of them was a puzzle with cardboard states that you'd put together. And then there was another one where they were made out of wood. They were, I think, maybe masonite or something, and they had been cut out with a jigsaw, and you had to kind of like piece them all together. And it was something of an exploration, I guess, at the time for me as a young kid, maybe being 7 years old, 8 years old, to even figure out something like, well, what direction is New York supposed to go anyway? You know?
Right. It does give you a different, look at things. So Nevada. And Michigan, it is backwards. I was going to ask, if you had Michigan done for you, would it be gold and blue or green and white, or what other colors would you use? Interesting.
In my house, it's green and white.
Yeah, my house is gold and blue. Yeah. And this image, this piece has been sold, but he says that he will do commissions and you can choose the colors you want. This is Illinois.
There's your Illinois, David.
Oh yeah. I think that's Wrigley Field.
I think so too.
Cubs play.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, now see, that's not something I would have read from that because I'm not from Illinois. Idaho. Four Corners.
Oh, that's Arizona, and it's 4 different states all put together. New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, and Colorado.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I've actually been to the Four Corners, and it's on an Indian or Native American reservation. And it just, it's like this, you can stand on the Four Corners and then there's nothing else to do. So you pay a lot of money to get in.
Sounds like a letdown.
It was a little bit. And then you reach down to touch and it's in the, it's in the blazing sun, and so it's really hot. So, but very interesting to be where all 4 states meet.
Interesting. And a finch. Cardinal, obviously. California.
I like the depth in some of these. This one in particular, where you feel like you're on a path or a road and space is going back into the distance, which is totally in opposition, I think, to the flatness of the shape,
Right.
Being like a map. Maps are always thought of as 2-dimensional, but then his imagery is often very 3-dimensional. That's cool.
Yeah. And using duct tape, it kind of boggles my mind. And the blue jay. Okay. Do we have any comments on Facebook, or are we?
We just got a thank you for so much for sharing. Much appreciated.
All right.
Yeah, thank you, Janice.
Okay. Well, again, thank you all for coming and being a part of this. David, I had a great time chatting with you and Jeanne. I only wish I could have had Biff and Scooter here to render their ideas as well. But I think that people will come to our website and look at this work even more deeply for this result. So thank you very much for being a part of it.
Thank you.
All righty.
Okay. Good night, guys.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.
So let's see. I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to